Hello, book lovers, and welcome to Authors Love Bookstores, presented by A Mighty Blaze. My name is Kimberly Hensle-Lowrance, and I'm your host today. If you're watching live with us on Facebook, welcome. We're so happy to have you. Please feel free to post questions for our guests via comment below the broadcast, and we'll get to as many as we can. Today, we're so excited to welcome best-selling author Susan Wiggs to Authors Love Bookstores. Susan's novels, well, she's written so many novels, more than 50, and they've appeared in the #1 spot on the New York Times bestseller list, and they've captured readers' hearts around the globe. Her books have been translated into more than 20 languages and released in more than 30 countries. And her latest novel is called The Lost and Found Bookshop, and it was released on July 7th, and it also debuted on the bestseller list. So we're so excited about that. Susan's previous novels include The Apple Orchard, which is currently being made into a film, so we have to hear about that, and the Lakeshore Chronicle series, which has been optioned for adaptation into a series. Publishers Weekly describes Susan's writing as refreshingly honest, full of emotion, and the Salem Statesman Journal adds that she is one of our best observers of stories of the heart, and she knows how to capture emotion on virtually every page of her books. Booklist also characterizes her novels as real and true and unforgettable, which fantastic. Unforgettable is what every author wants. Susan is joining us here today to talk about one of her favorite independent bookstores, Liberty Bay Books, located in Paulsbo, Washington. Did I get it right? Paulsbo, Washington.
Yeah.
I got it right. Excellent. And with us from Liberty Bay Books is bookstore owner Suzanne Ellis, and Suzanne is also an author. It's my favorite combination. I love authors and I love authors with bookstores. So we're going to have to talk a little bit about what that experience is like. And welcome to both of you. We're so happy you're here.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having us. This is a great break from the pandemic routine that we slog ourselves through every day. This is fantastic. Thank you for being here.
So one of the things we want to do is introduce our viewers to the store and give them a sense of what we're talking about. So Suzanne, a few questions for you. So Liberty Bay Books is located in Paulsbo, Washington, which is a half-hour ferry ride and a 20-minute car ride from Seattle. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to say that's on an island.
Well, you cross an island to get there. So
Okay.
if you go down to the waterfront of Seattle where they sell fish and chips and you hop on a ferry, you'll take a 30-minute ride across. And if you're lucky, you'll see orca and you'll see bald eagles. It's very beautiful. And then you'll drive across a little island called Bainbridge Island, which is actually where I live.
Okay.
And that's where Susan and I both live. And then you take the bridge and then you come to Paulsbo. And it's this very picturesque little town set on Liberty Bay, ringed by the Olympic Mountains.
Oh.
It's the kind of the start of the Kitsap Peninsula where you can go up and you can explore the oceans. And it's really a very picturesque little town. It was founded by Norwegian fishermen. So there's a very Scandinavian feel to the town, and there's a Sons of Norway Hall. They have Viking festivals. You'll see people dressed up as Vikings celebrating winter and summer solstice. And it's just a lovely place to have a bookstore.
It sounds romantic, and it sounds like it just sounds like how an author would describe a town that had a bookstore.
Well, there you go.
Picturesque and memorable. Now, the bookstore was founded in 1977, but you became the owner about 6 months ago.
Yeah. So it's been there for a long time. The previous owner sold it to me on February 1st of this year. So, impeccable timing, she bought out at a really good time, and who knew, what was going to happen. So it's definitely been a trial by fire.
I can imagine that a pandemic was not in your first year business plan.
No.
No.
No, not at all.
And what has been, what have you been doing with the store during this pandemic? Have you been open? Have you been closed? Have you been online? How have you had to adapt to respond?
Yeah, so like every other business owner, we've had to pivot, and we're constantly pivoting. And so we had to go to online. I closed the store on March 15th. So we renovated the store for 2 weeks, made it changed it completely, kind of gave it my personality. And we were open for 1 full month, and it was lovely. It was a great month. And then I decided to close on the 15th because of what was happening. And a week later, we had the governor of our state do a mandate where all businesses closed. So we had to go to online, and no independent small bookstore wants to be an online bookstore. That's not why we exist, but that's what we all had to do. So we had to learn that whole system and recreate our website, make it very consumer friendly, and learn. I had to become an Instagram expert where every day I'm showing what we have in the store, and our window displays became really important. And I would go into the store every single day with my son because he also works there as a bookseller. And behind closed doors, we would process online orders. We became a shipping department, packaging them, hauling them off to the post office. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was the hardest thing I've ever done every day. And then my son would do home deliveries. He would drive around for 2 hours in the evenings, taking books, mostly to older people who really didn't want to leave the house, so that our customers could get books. And it was quite a process.
Yeah, I can imagine. But here you are nearly 6 months after you took ownership of the bookstore. What would you say has been like the biggest lesson from this time that will guide you as you lead the bookstore forward?
Just the relationship that bookstores have with their customers. I've long been a customer of independent bookstores, but it's just a really intimate relationship, and it's lovely, and it really gives me a lot of hope for this movement that we're seeing with people deciding that I need to start spending my dollars in small businesses, because if I don't do that, these small businesses are going to disappear and our downtowns are going to disappear. And I'm seeing a lot of millennials. We're getting a lot of young families into the store, which really gives me hope. And they always tell me, they make a point, we chose to come here. We want to buy the books here. And so that's been wonderful to experience that.
Excellent. Now, Susan, this is your local bookstore.
It is. I have been going to Liberty Bay for decades. There's another independent bookstore on Bainbridge Island. And so I'm definitely a switch hitter, but I love, like Suzanne, I love the local indies. They are the ones that cater to our taste, and they help us discover new books. And they know us. They know what we're looking for. They know what we're looking for before we do. I've discovered so many new authors just based on a bookseller's recommendation, and they're creative, they're innovative, and I don't think it's ever been more apparent than now. The way that they've been able to pivot and make their way through this crazy pandemic time. Hats off to them. And I've seen it. You walk into Suzanne's store, everything is lined up. There's a pumping hand sanitizer station, and masks everywhere. And they're making the best of a crazy, insane situation. And one thing that Suzanne is too modest to say about herself is the way that she took a kind of a funky downtown cute space and gave it so much of her style and personality. She worked for weeks. It was like one of those home improvement shows where they would break into the wall and there would be nightmares in there, and then they would pick out colors. And you guys actually made like a paper mache tree in the middle of the space. Yeah, you guys go online and look up Liberty Bay Books. I just posted a picture of Paulsbo on my Twitter feed or my Instagram. I don't know which one, but that is one of Suzanne. She's very gifted, and so one of her many gifts is that she's very stylish. And you also have kind of a historic native art on the wall, right? Is it a Suquamish tribe mask?
Yeah, so we have a big mask on our wall because the Suquamish tribe is nearby. And I wanted to, and I've created a large Indigenous people section in the back as well. And we're slowly curating that section. But yeah, we took a big metal pole that's basically a support beam that was always just a metal pole in the middle of the store. And I had a bunch of authors come in, and we took some old dictionaries that we had, and they paper mache'd it with dictionary pages and turned it into a big tree. So it's really beautiful. It's right in the middle of the store. So yeah, we've done things like that.
Now, Susan, your latest book, The Lost and Found Bookshop, takes place in a bookstore, which, perfect.
It does, and that's why I was so focused on the way Suzanne was transforming her space, because I was building that world fictionally, and I was putting like all of my bookstore fantasies all in one shop. And so I picked the vintage building and all the fixtures and everything. And believe me, it's a lot easier to do virtually than it is in the real world. But the bookstore in my book has, I think it's really resonated with readers, because I'm getting a lot of really great feedback about the book, and I want to go there. Where is this bookstore? Where's Perdita Street? And I usually have to break it to them and say, yeah, I made that up. But it's one thing that my publisher did, and they didn't realize the timing of this was going to line up with a pandemic, is they produce an early run of the book specifically for independent booksellers, and they shipped them out, like I would say mid-February. And asked the independent booksellers to give us feedback on that review copy. And we got floods of it, because most of them wrote back and they said, I grabbed this on my way out the door as we were closing our bookstore indefinitely because of the pandemic. And they really responded to Natalie, my fictional bookseller, and the transformation that she had to make in her life just to keep this place afloat and look after some other parts of her life that were falling apart, because it's a Susan Wiggs book, and that's what happens in Susan Wiggs book. So it was kind of a weird I'm not going to say it right, synchronicity between what was happening in the world, and what was happening with my book. And I have to say, from the very start, as soon as I knew that Suzanne was going to be the new owner of Liberty Bay Books, I decided that, I don't get to decide, but I suggested to my publisher that on my book tour, remember those? No, we don't remember those. Those were 100 years ago. But I suggested that my book tour would start somewhere in the Bay Area where the book takes place, the setting of the book, and I would work my way up the West Coast, visiting independent bookstores, and the final stop would be Suzanne's Liberty Bay Books, and that would be our big launch party or whatever. And we had big plans, didn't we, Suzanne? I can't forget remember what they were, but we planned a really great event. And it's not just because Suzanne has a bookstore, it's because Suzanne's a friend for decades. Can I tell them how we met, Suzanne?
Sure.
Tell us.
Okay.
Yes.
Embarrass you some more. No, we met because her mother sells real estate, or used to sell real estate on the island. And the first house that I bought on Bainbridge Island, God, back in the late 80s or early 90s, was from her mother. And writing, as we know, is a very sedentary activity. And so I joined a fitness class, and Suzanne's mom was in the fitness class, and she's a very lovely, athletic woman who is so personable, unlike, introvert writers. She was very outgoing, and she approached me one day and she said, my daughter writes, and I think you should meet. And if you're a writer for any length of time, you hear this from everybody. I've got a great idea for a book, or I'll give you my idea and you write the book and give me half the money, or, you get pitched to all the time. I've been pitched to by a judge when I was trying to get out of jury duty. And I've been pitched to in elevators. Anytime somebody hears that you write, they want to, you know, share their writing dream with you, which is great because everybody's a storyteller and everybody has about 19 amazing pages in them. And then they're like, oh my God, this is work. I'm bored. And so typically, and I actually teach writing a lot. I've taught workshops and classes and things like that. And before I was a full-time writer, I was also a teacher. And so I enjoy that so much. And I encounter emerging writers at every level. I've helped high school kids with their college essays, all the way to, you know, very aging adults with their memoirs and everything in between. And so I thought, okay, I should meet because I just loved Marilyn, Suzanne's mom. And so, and I met with, you know, healthy skepticism. Here's another gal that, you know, wants to be on the bestseller list, because most people, their writing dream starts with having a bestseller. It doesn't usually start with doing the work of the writing. It's like, I just want a bestseller. You know, we've all watched Romancing the Stone and all those movies that kind of skip to the good part.
Right.
But anyway, no, we met and Suzanne did a couple of things right. Number one, she picked up the tab. We had lunch. Always a good plan when you're, you know, looking for conversations about something new you want to try, you know, pick up the tab. But the other thing was, you know, as I was like about to give her my lecture about you've got to sit down, you've got to sit in your chair and finish what you started. And she hauls out this manuscript that's like yay high and, you know, puts it on the table. Well, I have this, she said. And I'm like, oh my God, you wrote a whole book. And she said, yeah, I wrote the sequel too. And so I realized I wasn't dealing with a dilettante. This was a serious writer. And so it started with that conversation and, you know, we became friends at that point. And Suzanne did all the work and I watched her do all the work. She pitched the book, she got rejected, she queried agents, she went to writers conference, she did all, you know, she did all the stuff that is less fun, and emerged an amazing multi-published best-selling award-winning author. And so she's kind of the poster child for doing the work that it takes. And in all the hundreds of writers that I've met and talked to through the years, there are really only 3 who have emerged accomplished published writers, and Suzanne is by far the most accomplished. So I take full credit for that. So you're welcome, Suzanne.
And Suzanne, you have a new book out, and I know you have it to hold up. So it's called Braver. Right?
Yes, I have a new book out.
And you wrote this with your son? You both have it. And you wrote this with your son?
Yeah, so I've written over 30 books for young readers, and this is the first one I've ever written with another author, and it has happened to be my son. And gosh, it was actually a really lovely process. I mean, I don't know a lot of parents and their kids who could get through this and still talk to each other at the end, but we managed. But for my readers who read this and who know my other writing, they'll definitely see that there's a different influence in this book. And they'll find my normal humor and my quirky characters, but Walker, my son, he adds a lot of, he's very eloquent and his prose is quite beautiful. And so I would often give him the work of describing the environment and the atmosphere. And so it's different. It's a little different from my other books. And it just released in June. Yeah, I'm listening to it.
And I know that because I bought it from Liberty Bay Books and her son Walker hand delivered it to my home. So I felt very special. Yeah.
So what makes a successful author want to open a bookstore, want to purchase a bookstore? I mean, I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
What inspired you to make that, to broaden your embrace of the writing field?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't an overnight decision. It was never a fantasy of mine. I never imagined myself owning a bookstore. I always imagined myself as a writer. That was always my fantasy, but never a bookstore owner. And I do a lot of school visits and a lot of Skype visits with kids all throughout the year. And I had established a relationship with Liberty Bay Books. They handled all of the book sales for all those visits. So I was in there weekly signing books to be shipped off to different schools. So that's how I established my relationship with the store and the owner. And she began to say to me that she was starting to think about retiring. And we began to have this abstract conversation that maybe I'd own the store one day, but it was just that. It was always an abstraction. And then early last year, 2019, she said she was ready. She wanted to travel. She wanted to spend time with her grandchildren. And was I still interested? And so I did all my research. I met with lots of other local bookstore owners, and I sat down and I said, tell me the truth. And they all shared their numbers with me. Nobody tried to hide anything. They all just opened up their books, showed me the reality of owning a bookstore, what the numbers mean, the work that's required. They were wonderful. It's just a wonderful community of people. No sense of competition at all, just this really, really supportive group. And I met with my accountant, and I did a lot of that research. And, the red flags were there because you don't make a great living owning a bookstore. We all know that. But I began to not be able to stop thinking about it. I realized that I was spending a lot of my time suddenly in this new realm of possibly owning this bookstore. And it just became kind of who I was. And so I said yes. After about 6 months of thinking about it, I said yes, with the understanding that I wasn't afraid to fail. I said that to my husband. I said, I'm not afraid. If this doesn't work, I tried, and I'll walk away still proud that I tried. So, so it's going, despite a pandemic, we're doing okay. We're paying the bills, and I haven't had to take out any loans. And it's okay at this point. We're okay.
Good. Yep. We have an audience question for you.
Okay.
And I should say that's better than good. That's terrific to hear that things are on course, especially with all the uncertainty in the world. I think that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, I agree.
So an audience question for you, Suzanne. You have done great outreach and programming with schools and libraries, as you just said, locally and nationwide. Do you envision eventually doing outreach and programming through the bookstore? So expanding that programming to make it part of Liberty Bay Books?
Yeah, I had all those plans were in place, right? Okay. There's all sorts of things I want to develop, especially really community-based things. I mean, because that is how bookstores survive. They survive by bringing authors in and by doing school visits and having community fundraising events, all that kind of stuff. That's all on hold right now. And even though Zoom is available to us, it's not the same experience, and you don't sell books the same way that you do in person. So yes, when the world gets back to normal, that's the thing I really want to do is the programming. I want to have writing classes. I want to be able to partner with the Historical Society. I want to bring in writers, expand to more schools. So, yes.
Excellent.
If we can get through this, yes.
So one of the questions that we always get from our audience members is, what are you reading during the pandemic? So that's like, people have had such a hard time. They either are immersed in reading because it's an escape from the world, or they're finding that they can't focus on anything. So have the two of you found some solace in a book these past couple months? Do you have any recommendations for our audience, an author?
Always. I've always got a book, several books going, on my e-reader and on my nightstand. And so obviously been reading Braver. My granddaughter's just 6 right now, but she's pretty sophisticated. So I'm looking forward to reading this one with her and Suzanne's books. For myself, there's an unusual for me book. It's a memoir called Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Glennon Doyle. Yep. That it's such a thoughtful, really beautifully written and unusual and startling memoir. So I can't stop thinking about that. I read it a few weeks ago. I'm reading Debbie Harry's memoir. I like memoirs. Reading a novel called The Color of Air by Gail Tsukiyama, sorry. She's a writer that I've known for a while, and I'm a huge fan. And she only publishes, every few years, and so it's really special. And it's a book that came out the same day as the Lost and Found Bookshop, and so I picked it up then, and I'm loving this beautiful, tender book. Gail's an amazing, amazing writer, and one of my other fantasies about my non-existent book tour for the Lost and Found Bookshop is that Gail, who lives in the Bay Area, and I would have an event together for our books. But of course, that never materialized. Although one of the pleasures that I embedded in this book in the Lost and Found Bookshop
There you go.
is all of the books that my fictional bookseller mentions in the book, except for a few, are real books. And so I name draw, and they're books that I've loved. A customer in a scene walks in looking for a book, and my bookseller might recommend Love and Trouble by Claire Dederer, my friend, who wrote a wonderful book. And so things like that. So, and on my website, susanwiggs.com, if you click on Lost and Found Bookshop, there's a reader's guide, reading group guide, and there's one page that lists all the books cited in my book. And so, yeah. So if they want those recommendations, which reminds me, the other fun fact about this book that only Suzanne and I know until I tell you is that I was writing it when we were together on a boating adventure in northern Canada, up in Desolation Sound in Canada. Suzanne invited us to spend some time on their boat up there. And we were, of course, talking books and writing the whole time. And I described this book, and I said, there's a children's book author in the book, and he might or might not be the love interest. And we kind of made up his whole storyline there, and even had a fantasy that we never carried out, that I would write the Lost and Found Bookshop, and Suzanne would write the Trevor Dashwood books. That's what we decided his name was going to be. His pen name was Trevor Dashwood, and he writes these best-selling children's books. And so he's a character in the Lost and Found Bookshop. And I think he came into being on that boat trip.
Sounds very Jane Austen.
Yeah, exactly. You have a good ear.
So, and Suzanne, what have you been reading, or what's been selling in the bookstore? So you've people have been buying books during the quarantine. What have you been seeing that's been flying off the shelf?
What's interesting is classics have been flying off the shelf, and I developed this whole new classics section in our store, and there are a number of publishers that are publishing with these beautiful covers. So I'm really curating that section, and I'm that's my corgi, bringing in these beautiful covers, and people are reading classics a lot.
Yep.
But I'm reading a book right now that just came in. It just released on Tuesday. I'm loving it. It's called Crossings. And it's sort of a time travel book about two people who love each other. And they do what's called a crossing, where they move into their soul moves into another body through time. And they're trying to find each other. And what's neat about this book is you can read it from page 1 to page 300, or he's created this formula inside where you can read it in a completely different way. You can start on page 155, and then you go to page 45, and you follow this formula. And so I've been reading it that way, and it reveals the story in a completely different way. So I'm really loving this book. And like Susan, I've also been reading a lot of memoirs, just because I think during that time when we were really all stuck at home, I kind of wanted to read about other people's experiences and their lives. So I've been reading a lot of memoir as well.
So all of the books we've just mentioned can be purchased online from libertybaybooks.com, or the store is open. So for those in the area, am I correct? The store is open. Yeah. So for those in the area, you can come by and pick it up in person. And we did get an audience question confirming that the dog, is that Fiona, the bookish corgi?
It is Fiona, the bookish corgi.
So is that something else? If we come to the store, do we get to meet Fiona?
Not yet.
Not
She's
yet.
still a puppy,
Okay.
and I'm afraid she's going to trip people. So but she does have her own YouTube channel, and we're creating storytime videos with her. And but eventually she'll become a regular at the store. She just needs to mature a little bit.
Don't we all? We all probably do. So we're running up to the end of our time. So it's been delightful to speak with both of you. It's not often that we get booksellers and authors on this program who have been friends for as long as the two of you have been friends, and that's very special. And thank you for sharing that with us. For all of our viewers, you can check out, again, Liberty Bay Books online at libertybaybooks.com. Also, I think when it's safe to travel again, going to Paulsboro, Washington to check out this gorgeous little store sounds like that's a must-do for any traveler. And you can find out about Suzanne's books at suzanneselfors.com and Susan's books at susanwiggs.com. So please check out these impressive authors, this bookstore. I know that we've put the links below the broadcast so you can follow up on your own. And thank you so much for being here, joining us for Mighty Blaze's Authors Love Bookstores. Please join us next time. Until then, be well and keep reading. Thank you.